Hi, and welcome back to our podcast, Abilene People, on bigcountryhomepage.com, where we talk to Abilene's most interesting people. And today we have back a repeat guest, Dr. Brian Burton from Abilene Christian University, an expert in AI, gaming, technology, interwebs, computers, all those
That's a lot
things.
to be an expert on.
So we are going to do a deep dive today into the ethics related to all that, because last time we talked, that came up, and then we had some people in the social media world say, man, you guys really should talk more about that. And so here we are. Today we're going to talk more about it.
Well, and since our last visit, there's been so much developing in that area. So it's
There we go.
It's a fascinating area. It's a fascinating field, and changing so quickly.
Yeah, I guess that's part of the ethics too. You know, how do we behave responsibly in this digital world that changes so quickly? And I would anticipate some of the answers are going to be pro forma, like, well, you know, we each have to have personal responsibility and all.
Definitely.
But I know that you think a little deeper than that, and that's kind of where we want to go. So here's what I did. I thought, I don't know about this. I'm going to be talking to an expert. So I went to our friend ChatGPT and asked, and guess what? It very quickly researched you, all your books, and said, here's 3 categories of questions you should ask Dr. Brian Burton. So here we go.
We have notes. We're ready to go.
We have notes. Yeah. So as AI gets better at shaping how we play games, difficulty, storylines, even rewards in games, where do you think the line is between helping players have fun and manipulating them? Because there's a lot of that goes on.
That is a big question. That's an hour's discussion right there. The question of manipulating players comes up way before we entered the age of AI. So we've had the whole loot box issues that over the last few years. Are they gambling? Are they legitimate use? Are they fair to the player? We've got all kinds of issues related to the age of the player. What goes into doing this? Now, AI can potentially help an organization do a better job of that, or hopefully the whoever's using it and prompting it is telling it to give me an ethical method to help retain players, because that's always important when you're publishing a game, is player retention. Players playing until the end is a big issue.
And again, you've forgotten more than a guy like me knows about this. So if the question's poorly framed or not well informed, forgive and just, you know, give me a little grace here. But, you know, from my perspective, I see sometimes these guys playing, or girls, you know, people playing games. I'll even see reports of a gaming tournament that happens somewhere, and somebody wins a lot of money.
Esports and yes.
And is that a new thing? I guess that's been going on a while, but
it has been going on a while. It started really in the era with after World of Warcraft, but with Warcraft, StarCraft, a few games like that, and people started. It can be a team-based game, and so they started playing against one another. And that had a lot of popularity. People started watching it as a sport. That's really what launched the whole Twitch website, and people watching other people play games competitively. That has become a really big deal. We've got an esports team. I know of a lot of universities that have very active esports teams.
When you say we have an esports team, you're referring to Abilene Christian University here in Abilene?
Yes.
Okay.
They have it's a student organization.
And they compete with other colleges?
Yes, they do. And they have tournaments all over the country. I've got a friend that is very active in the esports that's up in Lubbock, and they are Division I. They actually have scholarships for students.
And are there ethical concerns related to this, or is all of this above board? I mean, because look, traditional sports has ethical considerations with gambling and such, game fixing and all. Seems to me a digital platform would invite those kind of concerns.
they do take a lot of precautions to make sure that there's not cheating going on, that there's no unfair advantages. Usually they're supplied with specific computers so that everybody has the same hardware.
Okay, so you're not having one guy come in with a really fast processor on his Apple Mac, and he's playing a guy like me on my old Radio Shack TR,
Right,
whatever.
right. Your Windows Surface computer that can't keep up. Yeah, it's above board. It is a lot like professional sports. Most organizations, most universities treat it as if it were the same as playing football or basketball, and the students are there as athletes. They're just athletes in a chair looking at a screen instead. But they have practices, they have GPA that they have to maintain. Frequently, they're at the universities that they're part of under scholarship.
I want to ask about the data that games collect and how much data is too much, because that's a big question about ethics. No?
Yes, that is a huge question. And again, we get into the question of how much data is being collected, what's the way the player is playing. The age of the player is obviously a very big concern. If they're under 18, and then if they're under 13, all kinds of legal issues come up to meet federal guidelines here in the U.S. and abroad. Europe has very stringent, very tight restrictions for requirements of data that can be collected on children that are playing.
And by and large, is your opinion that, again, by and large, painting with a really large brush, all that's very safe, or is
it has got in? Well, that's a huge can of worms. I believe it has gotten safer. I would not say it's safe. I believe, as a parent, as a grandparent, I monitor what my grandson is playing on the computer. We keep a very tight control, and it's in the same room that we are, so that we can see what's happening, any conversations that are occurring with other players. We want to make sure that they are protected, because anytime you're in a online environment playing a game, there are other people playing as well.
And you really don't know who the other
No,
people
you
are.
don't. You know, they may claim to be one thing, and that's not who they are.
Just today on my lunch break, I had a call, and usually if it is from a number I don't know, I don't answer, but I answered.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a young lady with a heavy accent, and I said, I think you got the wrong number. Well, guess what? In about 30 seconds, I got a text from that same number saying, oh, I'm so sorry that I called you. I had this number. And so I thought, well, I'm going to have this conversation with Dr. Burton today. Maybe I should text back and see what happened. Lo and behold, 3 or 4 texts later, they're inviting me kind of into their world, so to speak. Well, maybe we could set up an appointment and talk later. And I thought, this is nothing but bait and switch kind of thing going on. That happens in the gaming world.
That happens in the gaming world, just like it happens on our phone. There's catfishing going on. There's all kinds of problems where there are bad actors out there, and we have to be on our guard against that.
So, just to refresh the question, just is there a line in a free society that's too much data? Is there a line that other than a protective parent or grandparent, does the government have a role? Because theoretically, I would say I lean toward less regulation is better, but maybe there needs to be more regulation here.
We have regulation in place. There are federal guidelines. There are international guidelines in most countries that companies are supposed to follow. Now, enforcement of that might be a little spotty, but usually it catches up with you. You're not going to get away with it forever.
We're starting to see AI create entire worlds on digital platforms, game worlds and such, and they'll create dialogue. If you're interacting with AI creation, should you know that, or is it okay if they're also catfishing you and you don't even know that it's AI? Maybe again, I'm framing the question poorly, but do companies have a responsibility to say, hey, this is AI generated?
Currently, I don't believe there's any guidelines requiring that. Now, as an ethicist, I believe very strongly, and I mentioned this in the book that I recently published on AI for game developers, I talk about if you're using AI to hold conversations with players, with other people that are participating with it, serious games for better interaction, the player needs to know that they are interacting with an AI agent, that it's not a real person on the other end that they're talking to, it is an AI persona. So you do need to be careful on what kind of data information you're giving to the NPCs, the non-player characters in the environments.
Yeah, because those non-player characters that are just in the storyline, kind of baked in, almost like
Yes.
a cartoon character, so to speak, that they represent a big part of the storyline. And if you interact with them, are there any dangers there? Are they collecting information from you in the way you interact with an NPC?
They can. It is possible. Most of the tools that are out there are not out of the box going to be collecting that kind of data. They're there to have an interaction. For example, I've been working with my serious games class, and one of their assignments was to use an AI tool to go in, build a personality for a serious game, and the goal of the serious game is training management students to have difficult conversations with potential employees or with employees. And so in one case, I had them going through the practice of firing an employee. I said, you need to build employees that are going to react in different ways in all kinds of different situations, whether that's blue collar, whether that's white collar, whether that's different races, different genders. How are they going to react? Are they going to cry? Because you could build that into the personality. Are they going to get violent? Are they going to be depressed? How are they going to react? I imagine I would react in all three ways, but it's something that they have to build into that personality. By default, with that tool set, it does not collect any information from the player other than the actual conversation. That's kept as a data record.
Well, that leads right into another question, and as we transition on to other topics and areas, maybe this is the last one about gaming and AI. But what about stereotypes? I'm particularly thinking about gender stereotypes, racial stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be a big issue. How do developers make sure their AI-driven characters don't reinforce stereotypes?
And again, that's a topic that I addressed in the book. That's a very important thing, is that we not reinforce specific stereotypes that are available. It's something to be strongly avoided, and it requires a lot of player testing, a lot of testing of the AI tools to make sure that it isn't creating a stereotype that would be negative towards one group or another.
Yeah, because it would be really easy for us to just plunge right into the deep end with all of our, ethnocentric, what's the word I'm trying to say? Ethnocentric ideas,
Yes.
Our prejudices,
Mm-hmm.
because we're typically very blind to those.
Yes. It's easy. We're brought up in a specific environment. We're used to, for example, living in West Central Texas. There's a culture that comes with that. And then you go to another city. I recently traveled to Atlanta. Very different culture, very different environment. It was wonderful to experience that, but it was very different than what I was used to.
And one example of that would be my encounter with a young lady many years ago who was challenging me, and I just unfortunately used the terminology just to her in conversation, and called her a young girl, and she took immediate issue with that and said, "Well, there you go." And I got to thinking about that. How blind was I in that moment? Even as she's challenging me to speak down to her in a way that seemed very normative to me. How unfortunate is it that it seemed normative to me? And it's now baked into the AI world.
It can be. There's been, I think it was more of a problem 6 months ago, a year ago, than it is now, because People
Funny.
have been pointing
6
that.
months-
Yeah,
6 months
6
or a
months
year
ago
is a long time.
It's a long time in this environment. We've been through 2 iterations or 2 upgrades to the AI systems. And one of the things that was pointed out in these was anytime that there was ethnocentric response from it, or a derogatory or a bias from the AI system.
Yeah, or a chauvinistic response
Yes,
or a racist response.
yes. And so I think it has gotten better. In my testing, it seems better.
Okay. So as things evolve and change, it hopefully will trend for the better. But I want to talk about an area that boy, you talk about an area you've forgotten more about than I know. But so you can school us up. So what is Web 3.0? Just with a real broad brush, what is it?
Okay, so when the internet first started back in the 90s, it was Web 1.0. And that was static web pages for the most part, blinking things all over. They got rid of that because it was causing seizures. But that was Web 0.0. Beginning of 2000, we started going into Web 2.0, and that was responsive web pages, and you could put information in. That was the beginning of being able to order things over the internet rather than just sending an email saying, I want to order something. So we went from purely informative to starting to react. We're now currently what's considered Web 2.1, and that is your social media sites, your being able to watch videos on a variety of different sites. Those are the interactive environments. That includes your gaming sites. That is considered Web 2.0. Now, we do have some early examples of what Web 3.0 is going to look like, at least from a gaming standpoint. Roblox is an excellent example of what we can expect to see more broadly, and as well as Unreal's Fortnite. Those are both good examples of people are able to create environments that you're then able to go into interact with. Now, whether that is for shopping or whether that is for playing games or social interaction, Facebook. Well, no, it's not Facebook anymore. Meta, we've gone through a couple iterations there. Meta is an excellent example of a company that is going all in on Web 3.0. They are, with their new Horizon, much more interactive. Some people believe that it's going to require virtual reality goggles to truly join these environments. I don't think it's going to be a requirement. It's going to be an option if you want a more immersive site. We're not there yet for Web 3.0. Most people are predicting somewhere around 2030, 2032, we're beginning to see the infrastructure there to support Web 3.0.
Okay, so all of a sudden we're talking, 6 months to a year, everything happens so fast, but that's 7 years away? That's a long time. So is that, when you say the infrastructure, are we talking about things like the big data center being built here in Abilene?
That
the actual
contributes
infrastructure?
to it. Yes, that does contribute to it.
The hardware.
The hardware, you've got to have the computers to support it. You've got to be able to have the infrastructure for getting the information from that data center to the person that's viewing it. Web or 5G and 6 are going to help with that faster. Broadband currently is not fast enough to support the sub-second speed that's required to do a truly interactive Web 3.0.
Yeah, because we're all seeing how fast things are. And you're saying that in time, they'll be even faster.
That's what they're working on, yes.
And I wasn't really clued in to what decentralization meant relative to Web 3.0, but no central authority. And so if there's no central authority, I mean, who's responsible if chaos ensues or things go terribly wrong?
Well, I think what they're referring to when they say there's no central authority is that the data, the website is actually distributed. It's as close as we can get it to the player or the person in visiting the website as we possibly can. So,
So I was interpreting that to mean a locus of actual responsibility. You're saying, no, 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 it's not that at all. It's making the information more available and accessible because it's everywhere.
yes, it puts it into the cloud, so to speak, and that cloud location. The cloud is, of course, the internet, the backbone of it.
And it exists in these data centers
Yes.
that are proliferating. Is that
Yeah.
all around?
Yes.
Right here, there's
And
one.
some are going to be hosting websites. Some are going to be doing the data computations for artificial intelligence. Some are going to be doing both, and they're going to be mixed together.
And transparency here, we're not even really sure all that the 8 massive buildings holding all of the computers and the towers of and banks of processors and all that are going to be in the Abilene data center, we're not even sure who the tenant is or everything that they're going to have in those 8 massive
And it may
buildings.
be just a rented situation.
Yes.
You've got the hardware, you've got all of these computing devices that are in there, and then I can rent out a server. I can rent out a configuration. This is already available. If I want to spin up a website, I choose where do I want to have it hosted? How much memory do I want?
You mean actually choose physically where you want it hosted?
At this time. Now, I think we're going to be evolving into the distributed model where it's going to be, I don't care where it's hosted, just get it to
which
my...
gets to decentralization, right?
Yes, yes. And we're going to see that increasing more and more. Right now, say, for example, Amazon Web Services. They have data centers in Ohio, in Virginia, in Oregon, in Washington State, and then Asia and Europe and other places like that. I choose where I want to launch my website, and then that is then located in that data center.
So do you think that these early adapters have such a huge advantage? Because one of the promises that, as I understand it, Web 3.0 was going to have a level playing field. You know, a small guy can be as big as the big guy. Well, I don't know. Is that true? Because you just gave us examples of Amazon,
Right,
who is light years down the way
yes,
of employing all of this technology to sell their goods and wares and influence us to buy their goods and wares. I mean, for Pete's sake, you can't go on a social media platform for 30 seconds without getting hit with an advertisement to buy something, very often from Amazon.
yes.
So, I mean, how would a guy who's starting his little business selling these kayaks that he makes, for example, with his really integrated folding pattern, you put them in your back of your car and get to the lake and you unfold them, you got a paddle and it comes with a life vest and he's going to sell those things. Well, how can he possibly compete?
It's going to be, it'll be challenging. You've got to somehow get your name out there, whether that is using advertising. A lot of companies have gone to using the big name places, whether that's Etsy, whether that's Amazon, whether that's eBay. They're using that or selling it on all of them as well as their own website. So you got to do what you have to do to compete.
So here you are, a professor, you know, and you probably, in terms of your teaching career and research career, have more of your career in your rearview mirror than out in front of you, you know, by this time in your career.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
The reason I bring that up is in no way to offend you. I'm older than you are, but just to point out, at what point in your timeline did you think, oh my word, this has changed radically? Because I can't imagine that 20 years ago you anticipated all this.
I would say actually it was the late 90s that when I realized this has changed everything. And I jumped in. At the time, I was teaching information systems. How do networks work? How do databases connect? And doing that. And I made the conscious shift to emphasize more on how do we start building the interactive game environments for this online environment.
And did people look at you like you were a little nuts?
Yes, they did. But because of that, I had one of the first game development programs in the world and launched it back in 2004.
And did the students, the young people, get on board
Oh
pretty
yeah,
quickly?
they were like, yeah, this is where they understood the message.
Yeah, and so I wanted to ask about that. Why is that? I mean, I mean, not trying to set us up for any jokes about old people, but there's plenty out there. But why do young people catch on to this so quickly? Is it just because organically they get it? They've been raised in it,
I think that contributes to it. I think also they don't have as much baggage going into the new technology. It's like my grandson regularly, points out, "Come on, Granddad, keep up. We're moving along here." He shows me how to do things that I had never even thought about
And how
doing.
old is he?
He is 7.
And does he know that you're a real smart guy and you literally wrote the book on a lot of this?
I tell him, regularly, I don't think it matters to him.
Yeah.
It's
That's kind of fascinating, isn't it? You
Yeah.
think about that. Step back and think about that for a second. And it's hard because it's the aquarium you live in.
right.
I'm just sitting here across the table from you thinking, wow, wait, what? And I guess that's the case across the board.
Oh yeah, he is what I guess we would refer to as a digital native. He has been raised with it. He's sees us using smartphones. He sees us using tablets. He has his own tablet to practice his schoolwork on. He interacts with this technology on a day in, day out basis. Now, does he know how to program? Does he know how to make the apps to put on there? Actually, he does, because I've been teaching that to him. But, he and I sat down and got on Roblox and started making a world and environment, and he was moving things around in that environment after I just showed him a few little tricks to it. He was developing his own game. And yes, there are zombies in his game.
So, our producer, Travis Corrigan, who people may remember the last time you were here, sat at the table with you, was one of your students at Abilene Christian. And he's over at the switcher board. I just want to ask him, Travis, what year were you born?
2000.
Year 2000. And I talk to Travis all the time about these kind of dynamics. And I'm fascinated because he's never known a world
Right.
without cell phones, never known a world without smartphones,
Yeah.
never known a world without much of what we're discussing. Well, your grandson would make him look like a piker, it's so quickly. And somebody born 10 years from now, what kind of
Exactly.
world will they be born into? And the ethics of all of that, that's kind of where we are in this conversation. I don't know how to frame it other than how do we safeguard, how do we move forward? And is it at the end of the day up to the individual people? You brought up Meta a moment ago. Do we trust the people at the top levels of Meta?
I'm going to say this carefully. At the end of the day, their goal is to make their stockholders happy. And that is who they are responsible to. I think that over the last 10 years, they've been called, and not just Meta, but all the social media companies, they've been called out enough times when they did not behave ethically, that they are more aware now that they are being watched. People are paying attention. If nothing else, you're going to eventually be called up in front of Congress if you're not behaving ethically. And so I'm hopeful, but I'm also cautiously optimistic that we're seeing improvements. I want to make sure that my grandchildren, the children in my community, the children at my church, the children in my sphere of influence have somebody that is an advocate for their safety, for what's best for them. And I think that's on all of us. We need to hold accountable. Back to our AI issue. This is evolving so quickly, it's not possible to make legislation for guidance on it. Everybody is calling for, there needs to be more legislation, there needs to be more guidance to make sure that there's accountability there. I agree. There needs to be more accountability there, but you cannot write a law for technology that is happening so quickly. There's a group, Future of Humanity, that is very actively trying to protect against runaway AI, against runaway companies that are just trying to get to the generalized AI that can do anything, that is as smart as a person or super intelligence. They put out regular updates. They put out legislative guidance. They put surveys out and try to keep the people that are making the decisions, making the laws in the know so that they aren't overly influenced by a blank check.
Well, you make a really important point that Zuckerberg and others are interested in the bottom line. But we do have ethical responsibilities. And I think that as a bartender, if I keep serving you shots of whiskey well past the point when you're clearly inebriated, that I have an ethical responsibility and ultimately a legal responsibility to say, no, that's enough.
Yes.
And I realize that it's certainly apples and oranges at best because the world of bartending isn't rapidly changing.
Right.
You're saying the laws that govern bartenders are fairly static.
Yeah, this is not a evolving career choice.
The laws for AI and the digital world
Yes.
can't keep up.
Right.
So what we've got to have then are really ethical barkeeps across the board.
Yes, exactly.
Somebody who's going to be motivated not because they're afraid of the law
right.
to not serve you another shot, but motivated because they have a sense of ethics
Yes.
that they have owned, that they've internalized.
Right.
And I don't know that we can trust people in this day and age to not serve the public another.
They have this huge paycheck dangling in front of them. And what I read earlier today, that most of the AI companies are projecting that either by 2027 or 2028, that they're going to be a $100 billion company in revenue. That's an awful big temptation to be chasing after that. And they're all in competition with each other as to who can deliver it the most. Then we've got the added competition of bad actors from other countries that are going to be training and using AI against us.
And, I know that we don't want to take a diversion into the world of politics, but in today's age, with money playing the role that it's playing in our politics in Washington, D.C., or in Austin, Texas, God help us.
Yes. Yes. That is my number one concern is what is the role that money is playing in the decision making?
Well, there you have it, folks. A bright and cheery podcast today. Now, I want to ask a couple more questions.
Yeah, let's end happy.
kind of change the conversation about the ethical responsibilities that developers have toward players of games who get attached to characters in the game.
Okay.
Because that's a big deal, right?
That is a big deal. There is we have this concept of embodied cognition, and that's the big fancy academic term for meaning that I've got a character that I've created. I care about this character. Now, this goes way back before AI. This goes way back before, back in the old days when I played Dungeons and Dragons in the 1980s, we would become very attached to our characters that we had created. And so there was an embodied cognition that was my avatar in this imaginary world. As we shift into Web 3.0, as we do the Fortnite, as we do Roblox, as we do these different AI environments or just game environments, We create our avatar, we create our character. I'm a longtime Skyrim player. I've been playing it since it first came out in, I think, 2010 or 2011. It's you create a character into this imaginative environment. So that is my embodied cognitive embodiment in that environment, and that's my representative to this world. Think of it like the movie Avatar. This person went into a suit and had a character in a moving robotic creature running around inside the real world for the planet they were living on. That was their embodied, he was literally embodied cognition into that character. We're not there, nor do we want to be.
But you do have people who live in their digital experience,
Yes.
kind of like the characters in Avatar.
Yes. And that becomes their environment that they think that they play in, that they relate to these characters.
So what do we say to people? Because you have to have these conversations with your students all the time. What do you say to these kids? Do you say, go in your mom's basement and, disappear for 12 hours? It doesn't matter. Surely not.
No, that's not what we encourage. We try and encourage balance. Every hour, get up and move around, do something different. Set a timer for how long you're going to allow yourself to play. Different temperaments, different personality types have different requirements to make sure that they don't go into that. If you're more extroverted, that's probably not as much of a temptation. You're going to most likely go out and be in a more public environment to socialize. The more introverted, well, that is a social release for them, that a safe way to interact. Or if you live more rural and don't get to go to town or interact with people, those types of environments give you a social release.
And so, half full or half empty, do you think the glass is relative to all of this as you think about the future? Are you positive, or are you secretly scared to death and just don't want to admit it?
That's an excellent question. I think I'm more, we have half a glass of water, and there are days when it's half full. There are days when it's half empty. I try to keep a positive, as an educator, as someone who is trying to encourage others to do the right thing. I prefer to paint a picture of a good environment for the future, to encourage people to move towards that direction. That what's the if you're flying a plane, if you're a pilot, you don't look at where you don't want to go, you look at where you want to go. And that needs to be our focus. We need to focus on, what do we want for our children? What do we want for our grandchildren? What do we want for society? Let's focus on that. Let's encourage those that are CEOs and boards that are running these mega corporations to focus on, what can we do to make the world a better place? How can we use our influence to bring everybody up?
I like it. That's a good way to close.
Okay.
Yeah. And as technology develops so fast, I don't know that it's right to say ethics itself develops, but I think that ethics has to, maybe it is fair to say develops, that ethics has to adapt and communicate and do course corrections. And our course corrections have to be based on a sense of ethical responsibilities.
Yes. And hopefully we can get people to think about their ethical responsibilities before there's a mishap. Unfortunately, well, that usually doesn't make the news. What we see happen in the news and gets congressional investigations and things like that are when it didn't happen or when something goes wrong. So, the unsung hero really is the person that is going out there and stopping the bad from happening they are thinking about these from beforehand, and I think they need a pat on the back that they are making the world a better place, and nobody's even realizing what was avoided because of their actions, and so we need to congratulate those people and tell them well done.
Back to my I guess example, metaphor, comparison of the bartender.
Mm-hmm.
The unsung heroes are the designated drivers. The unsung heroes are
Yes.
the responsible
Yes.
bartenders.
And I think we have a lot more responsible people out there than what gets credit. They are there.
Because the drunks and the DUIs get all the attention.
Yes. So the 1 in 1,000 or whatever, I don't have statistics on that.
But the metaphor, the
metaphor holds.
comparison holds.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that we are acting responsibly and making sure that not just my children, my grandchildren, my neighbors' children are safe, but we need to make sure that our community and by extension, everybody is my neighbor. Who is my neighbor? And that's everybody. That's who we need to be caring about. Everybody's children needs that opportunity to have that good life, to not be manipulated.
Dr. Brian Burton, thanks for coming again.
Thank you for having me.
I bet we'll see you again sometime.
Well, that'd be great.
Because it seems like what were we here like 6 weeks ago, maybe
Yeah,
2
it was
months
just
ago?
6 weeks ago.
6 weeks, 2 months from now,
It's like a
everything's going to
different
change so
world.
much.
Yes.
Yeah. And thank you for joining us here on Abilene People, our podcast on bigcountryhomepage.com. Big shout out to Travis Corrigan, our ace producer, always making things work for us over there. And as things evolve, I think that we can rely on the good people like Dr. Brian Burton to help us find our path, or as he might say, find our direction of our airplane, or as I might say, find our way to leave the bar responsibly. And full disclosure, for me, it would probably be a nice anejo or reposado tequila, not really whiskey, but that's another conversation, a podcast for another time. But we do appreciate you joining us here, and we will see you next time on Abilene People. I'm your host, Danny Sims. Thanks for joining us.